What's happening? Welcome to the 19th episode of the Slapstream with Djordje live from Slapsville. Today, we're going to be talking about jazz again. We had a few rock and roll episodes with Eddie Cochran's bass player Gaibo and Vic from the Coffin Cats, and now we're moving on. You know that I like to switch between genres and present slap bass the way it should be presented, because that's the only technique and you can use it and apply it to any music genre. Before we start, I would like to thank to our new Patreons. Thanks a lot for that. Please check out the Patreon link down below and check out a few other options how you can donate and support the Slapstream, PayPal, Venmo as well. And I have enabled the super chat and super stickers. Those are right under the live chat comments. So if you like what I'm doing, please do that as well. And what else? All the other links are below. So you can follow me. You can follow Art of Slap Bass. Art of Slap Bass, the most important. And you can follow my guest for tonight. And my guest for tonight is a jazz double bass player. As you know, I love jazz, but unfortunately not too many jazz bass players use slap bass technique. So I'm always super excited to talk to someone that likes slap and that enjoy doing it and play it on a great level. We have a couple comments already. Saleh and John, thank you. Hope you can hear me fine. I always appreciate the comments, so please let me know if you need something louder, quieter, if me and my guests are balanced as far as volume goes, and all of that. So without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest, BARRY STEPHENSON. Welcome, Barry.
Hey, how's everybody doing out there?
Doing pretty good. How are you?
I'm well, man. I can't complain.
How you just came back from the gig, right?
Yeah, man. It was cold out here. I'm in New York City, so most of the indoor dining is still closed. But it was a little cafe. We played outside. So
that's nice. I mean, so
summer's
gigs are kind of back in New York.
I wouldn't even say that. I would say that people are starting to find creative ways to play in different spaces. That normally, I mean, you wouldn't be playing on a sidewalk on 96th Street, but that's happened to be the case this time around, But it was cool. I mean, it was literally cold, so it was a little hard to kind of warm up, but work through it. Got the fingers, the blood moving through the fingers, and
Oh yeah. Yeah. You're playing steel strings, right?
Yeah, they're the ones that are on this bass are the Lobella black nylon, so they're like a hybrid string, yeah.
We're going to talk about your gear later, but I was wondering, since whenever I play bass and it's cold outside, I feel like I'm playing razors or something.
Oh, it's the worst. It's the absolute worst. It's especially with steel strings. It's like, ooh, but then with guts, you have to deal with like they feel real tight and like they're kind of like the intonation gets real weird and they start but. Anyway, your intonation is going to get squirrely outside anyway if it's cold, because the bass is going to steadily get sharper. It is what it is.
Well, we're surviving. So how have you been doing during these pandemic times, the end of the world, end of the live music?
I've been doing well, man. I can't complain. Like everything's cool on my end. Just working through some music and trying to stay inspired like the rest of us. Sharp, keeping your skills sharp. Everything in between. I remember my first gig back, like playing. The skill of playing with people is such a different muscle than practicing by yourself. So just getting used to that, and then being able, like, the reality of playing like for an hour straight, and then if you're starting to do more sets, it's like being able to play a night of music, and play up tempo. That's where it starts to be like, oh snap, I ain't playing this fast, and whoo. So yeah, it's definitely nice being back, but it's one of those kind of wake up calls. Like, okay, time to get this together,
Absolutely. And New York is kind of the place for jazz, where I always, whenever I go there, I get a little scared if I have to go to a jam session, and
Oh man.
songs I never heard of, and have to play this in this ridiculous tempo. Yeah, you can't do that.
Yeah,
That's
man, it's
funny.
it's a different kind of beast, you know. It's a beast of a city, but I feel like every scene has their songbook of choice that when you go to that scene, you're gonna hear more of this song as well, versus like when you're in this scene, you're gonna hear these kind of standards or whatever. So, but I definitely feel you. There's a certain edge in New York that kind of makes it's a little intimidating at times, you know.
Absolutely. Um, do you how did you start playing bass, and when did you start playing upright bass?
Well, I started playing electric bass first, and I got into like heavy metal and punk rock in eighth grade, and inadvertently got into the jazz band where a friend of mine showed me upright bass a little bit, but I didn't really start taking lessons on it and kind of getting serious about it until about 12th grade, right before my audition for FSU and at Florida State University, and happened to get in, and I studied with the great Rodney Jordan and Melanie Puncher. I did some classical lessons and stuff like while I was there as well. Because I figured, why not? Like I'm here, I have all these resources to, amazing artists and musicians. Why not learn it all? So I got into that kind of thing, and then while I was at FSU, great bassist Roland Guerin was playing with Marcus Roberts' trio for that time. Marcus Roberts was an adjunct professor at Florida State, and I saw someone slap for the first time on upright, and I was like, "What?" And so I just kind of, he would come every year, so I would always see it and kind of check out what he was doing and try some things out myself. But and then I eventually went to New Orleans, studied with him at the University of New Orleans, and so I got a chance to really, really see it in action and study with him firsthand, which was beautiful.
So that's what I was wondering, if you were, if he was the main influence, because he seems
Definitely.
kind of to be one of the only guys that are doing it in jazz on that higher level these days. Unfortunately, I mean, I love slapping jazz, but not many people are doing it.
Yeah,
So
he
he was the
definitely
reason.
he definitely was a huge influence for me. But then you start going back and listening and checking out like how Wellman Broad used to like he used to do it on Duke Ellington records, like It Don't Mean a Thing. That was kind of one of the first songs when I was like, all right, how do I do this? I figured out how to do it over It Don't Mean a Thing.
Wellman Broad was amazing. I love the stuff that he did with Duke at a Cotton Club, and I remember there was a CD box set that I bought like from Cotton Club sessions where he was slapping all over the place.
Oh yeah, man. And there's a photo in the jazz bass book of him slapping, and he has the bow in his hand. So I used to be like, what? And then I was reading about in that book how like certain, and you hear it in the music, certain tunes they're going between slapping, bowing, playing regular pizzicato, and like switching in all in one song. I'm like, damn, in a 3-minute song, you got through a lot. you know?
But that's a great thing about slap, that you can kind of bring completely different sound to a song, especially if you play with the bow and pizzicato. It's almost like a different instrument, but it immediately lifts up the energy. And I never seen anyone not loving it. Everybody loves
Yeah. And it's funny being an orchestra at the same time. I learned about the Bartok pits, which is like a way different concept, and it's usually not a rapid succession of notes. It's usually kind of like a quick thing, but just that whole concept of like just the sound of it, like figuring out different sounds when playing the bass. You had my friend Martin Mazakowski on here a couple of weeks ago, and Martin, one time when I was living in New Orleans, he moved back from the Netherlands, and we would shed, and he showed me all these sounds that he had figured out with like hanging out with these gypsies and touring with like all these Balkan musicians. So and he has a whole different slap technique. So when I saw his slap technique and all the other cats in New Orleans who were still using it, it definitely took from here, took from there, then getting into other starts, checking out, of course, the legendary Willie Dixon. Like once I saw like was like, okay, that's how you use it in like a folksy kind of, you know what I mean? Get a different kind of energy with it. Same thing with like, you know, bluegrass and country. Like I did stuff like that down in New Orleans and in Tallahassee and even in New York now sometimes. So, you know, figuring out where to put it in that kind of style is also it's really enjoyable.
I'm glad you mentioned orchestra and Bartok Pizzicato, because not many people are aware that kind of like one of the earliest uses of slap is, I believe that's fourth string quartet that Bartok wrote, and that he used Bartok Pizzicato, but he used it only on violin, viola, and cello. He was not using it on bass.
Yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah. So have you ever come across any compositions that were using Bartok Pizzicato on bass?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact pieces we were playing because it was so long ago. It's been damn near 15 years. But I think, you know, there's certain pieces of like orchestral pieces of Prokofiev and stuff like that where he'll use the Bartok bits. It's in the literature, especially modern pieces. Like a lot of the more contemporary pieces are going to write these whole sections where you're doing like Bartok pizzas in the cello and bass section that's going against something in the violin and, you know, all this kind of stuff. So.
And were they teaching Bartok Pizzicato like this type of thing, or like kind of like we slap?
No, it's more of you pick it like you just did with your index and your thumb.
Like this?
Like,
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's like a pull out as opposed to like your whole hand getting around the string and pulling it out, you know?
That's the same thing I came across when I was playing in symphony orchestras. And I always thought, this is kind of weird. Like I should be just slapping. It sounds better. And I used it on some pieces, and the conductors loved it. And then, but you can't like just teach the whole bass section like, hey, you know, immediately do slap this way, because they're gonna be like, they were like, oh, we're ruining our fingerboards. No, this is not.
Yeah.
We're not music, that type of thing.
Yeah, you know.
Well, we do.
Yeah, you know. I mean, the gatekeeper. I mean, you know, you play with a band where they'll probably tell you like, man, you're putting your knee on the bass and leaning. You shouldn't do that. You're like, why not? So you know, whenever people tell you shouldn't do that, you're like, yeah, let's do that.
Exactly.
So, you know,
you come from rock and metal world, so
it's like no rules, just
no
right.
rules. Yeah, whatever sounds good, that's the only rule. Do you remember what was the first lick or first song that you learned with slap bass?
It don't mean a thing if it ain't got that swing. Yeah, it was. I noticed that Wellman Bro was doing that on that tune, so I decided. I was like, well, this is an easy kind of introduction to the tune because it's pretty steady and it's just like really single and double slap, so it's not really much out of your, you know, wheelhouse, if you want to, so to speak. You know.
It is, and but he had great sound. I read somewhere that he was standing closer to the microphone, so which was the reason why he sound so loud on those recordings.
Well, you know, in the back in the day, they only had a couple of microphones that would capture the entire sound of the band. So one thing Duke Ellington did was he would put the bass player at the front of the band right by him. Or if it was like a particular solo spot, he would have the bass player come right up front in the orchestra, you know? Bass players like Jimmy Blanton, like whenever Jimmy Blanton would play, I mean, they had him front and center, you know, that was the star of the band, along with Johnny, you know, Johnny Dodds and Johnny Hodges and Ben Webster. But man, like that's a rabbit hole, you know?
I'm glad you mentioned Jimmy Blanton, and I have a question that I always ask, you know, especially jazz musicians. Why do you think that slap bass kind of disappeared in jazz music once Jimmy Blanton joined Duke Ellington? Kind of like, I mean, I understand that he changed the style of playing and brought bass on a kind of next level, but I never understand why slap was not kept in a way, and it almost became a bad word in jazz, and then for such a long period of time, except with Milt Hinton, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, well, the way I look at it is when Jimmy Blanton came along, he started playing longer notes. So they started wanting the feeling of how the longer notes would drive the band. And so with that kind of thing, you had a smoother touch, if you will, and a little bit of a different kind of articulation. So when that happens, the band starts being propelled by that as opposed to just like, the percussive sound of the bass. And then, the accompaniment of the drums goes more from the hi-hat to the ride cymbal. So it's a smoother sound. And you get bebop and, those tempos, they weren't trying to keep those tempos, trying to slap that, and it also called for a smoother articulation as well. So I think with that, coupled with, the racial undertones of playing traditional or what they were calling Dixieland at the time, which is a whole other discussion. Whenever people didn't want to get pegged into that box and they considered it old timey, if you will. So, you still have people like Arvil Shaw, though, with Louis Armstrong, who were using that technique depending on what song it was. But it kind of dropped out, I think, in terms of that. But a lot of the older swing bass players still did like Major Holly, Milt Hinton, as you said, Slam Stewart, of course, he was bowing and doing all that stuff at the same time. So I think it was an era per se, as opposed to like it just kind of became a thing, But the people who play traditional jazz in New Orleans through the jazz revival or whatnot, people like Chester's artists, they were still playing this style. So it didn't disappear, it just became less mainstream, I would say,
Well, let's bring it back to modern jazz.
And Mingus would do it sometimes. There's some recordings of Mingus slapping, and it's just a thing, I think it just kind of transferred and styles changed, and it wasn't in style,
He played it in the song Jelly Roll, I think.
Yep.
And there's like a few versions of that song that like with different titles, but basically the same melody.
Yeah. Also, that song, "Mama's Little Baby Don't Want No Shortening Bread." Type that in on YouTube. Yeah, that's a deep one.
I'm not sure if I seen that one. I love Mingus, but I have to check that one out.
Yeah, that one's from the 70s.
Oh, was he slapping?
Yeah, he's like singing and slapping at the same time. It's a vibe.
Oh, cool. Was it like making it like kind of like a joke, or was it like, oh, this?
He was in the style he was playing. He was trying to bring like a gospel kind of like folkier sound, so he did that, And I think it was also easier for him to play time while singing what he was singing and playing just like roots and fifths,
I love his playing. I kind of hear his influence a little bit on your last record.
Oh man, his influence is definitely all over me. He's one of, not just as a bassist, but as a composer as well, and a personality. Like Mingus being a band leader, he started his own record label. He was one of the first jazz musicians to experiment with overdubbing. Like he would go in and overdub his entire bass part from like a performance after the fact, and like that's just who he was, a lot of the concept for my last record, The Iconoclast, that just came out, and it's available on Bandcamp. It came out of the record Charles Mingus Presents Charles Mingus, where he's playing with Danny Richmond, Eric Dolphin, who's one of my absolute favorite alto saxophonists, and Ted Curson on trumpet. And he has it set up as if they're doing a performance, and he tells the audience not to, applaud or order drinks, don't open the cash register, that kind of stuff. But they're in a studio and there's no audience in reality. So it's like what was he thinking? It's just he's a deep dude, man. He's a deep dude.
Oh yeah, I love Mingus, and I love Dolphy, especially when he plays with Mingus. I mean, that lineup was amazing with Danny Richmond as well.
Yeah, that lineup is quintessential listening, in my opinion.
Absolutely. How did you develop your own style of playing? I mean, I know that we're all still developing our own style, but like at the point where you're at right now, you combine different techniques. You combine slap, you combine pizzicato, and bow. So what, besides Mingus, who are your main influences, and how would you say that you found your own voice?
Yeah, in terms of, I feel like we're all, like you said, we're all developing at all points in times. For me, when I started getting into jazz, a lot of my influences were, Paul Chambers, Ray Brown, um, Ron Carter, who I'm currently studying with, which is like a dream come true. Um, Jimmy Bland, of course, Oscar Pettiford, Jimmy Garrison is a huge influence. Mingus, Charlie Hayden, just a bunch of the cats, Sam Jones, Ezra Crosby, like all the cats. And then when I moved to New Orleans and I was playing, more traditional music, I went back and started checking out cats like, Alcide, Slow Drag, Pavajo, and then, stuff like Al Morgan and what's my name? Bill Johnson, who was playing with Jelly Roll. Like, whew, that's some bad stuff. But I also listen to other music at the same time. Like, so Bootsy Collins is a huge influence on me. People around, like Derek Hodge right now. Love Derek Hodge. A lot of different music, man. Freaking Matt Freeman from Rancid, Fat Mike from NoFX. I'm a big, growing up, I was a huge Blink-182 fan and Green Day. So I love Mark Hoppus and Mike Dern. Freaking Twiggy from Marilyn Manson. I used to play a lot of that stuff. Chavo from System of a Down. All that stuff. And it's just through the years, it just kind of assimilates itself into who you are as an artist and comes out in different ways at different points in time. So I'd say a lot of listening, learning, really, really just getting into the music that I'm checking out and trying to make it, so when I'm playing, I'm not actually thinking about, I need to sound like this dude or play this thing. It's more like, how do I surrender to this moment and play the best thing for this moment at this time,
That was always kind of like my thing, to keep my ears open to any sounds, any music that it's available, and try to understand it, try to play it, and try to accept it. And the first time I came to a conclusion that that's kind of like my goal was when I was reading Milt Hinton's book, one of his books. I think the photography one, the big one, when he was saying like, like I hear all these young cats, I still want to, learn. I still keep my ears open.
Yeah,
I want to steal their knowledge, their ideas, because I offer them mine. So
yeah, man.
It's kind of like give and take type of thing.
100%. It's it's one of those things where the greatest musicians are that make the best thieves, and it's like even when you're playing, if you're really serious about music and trying to get better at your craft, like it's a lifelong journey. Like you're never really gonna get to a point where you're like, man, I'm amazing and I don't need to practice anymore. Like there's always something you can learn. If you really love music, like there's always some artist you've never heard of before to check out, or some different style of music that you're like, oh snap, that's cool. Let me take that little thing and add it to my thing. So that's how I did it. I just take everything I'm hearing and try and see what I like about it, what I don't like about it, and how I can use it or not use it, or just sometimes it's just appreciate it. It's like, oh, that's different. That's cool. I wouldn't have done it like that, but it's nice. It's interesting to hear that approach.
Sometimes you discover what you never want to do or use in your own music. I would like to hear you play something. Is your band somewhere close by?
Yeah, hold on one second.
Let's do that.
Make sure the
Thanks a lot for everyone for joining us. Hope you enjoyed this episode, the 19th episode of the Slapstream with Djordje, while Barry is getting ready with his bass. I would like to remind you to subscribe to my channel because there's tons of cool interviews coming up. I'm kind of booked for next 2 months. I'm stoked about that. And please join every Saturday, 11 o'clock Los Angeles time, Slapsville time. And I think that Barry is ready. So let's do this.
All right. Can you guys see everything?
I do.
I'm going to put this down just a little bit more. All right.
Thanks a lot. So Rafael Martinez said, "Awesome."
Thank you.
So what was that?
That was
What have you played?
that tune actually was something I wrote a little while ago, kind of tribute to my mentor Roland Gare, and I call it "Slap for Roland."
Oh, really? Oh, nice.
Yeah, man. Just he's given me so much as a teacher and really just as a guru of knowledge. He really had a profound impact just on the way I approach music, especially my slap. Like everything I learned about slap is definitely has been from watching him and talking with him and trying to figure out his approach. And Roland's the kind of teacher who he's not going to tell you how to do something. He's gonna allow you to figure it out and how you do it, because that's how he did it. He figured out how to do it his way, So he gives you gems to kind of explore on your own terms. And he's not going to say, well, you need to do this and you need to. No, he's going to say, here's a concept, run with this concept and see what you figure out. And it was just one of those things that for me it was perfect for how I learned. Man. So that was Slap for Roland.
Nice. He's a great player. I met him a few times when I was in Baton Rouge touring, like maybe 15 years ago, and I knew that he was living in Baton Rouge back in those days.
Yeah.
And I read that article in Bass Player magazine a couple of years before that, where he was doing kind of like a slap bass lesson. And I wanted to make sure to get in touch with him. I came to his he had like some corporate gig where he was playing bass guitar, but then he came to the place where I was staying, and we were jamming and slapping for a couple hours.
Oh yeah, man!
It was great. I love Roland.
Man,
he's not playing much like slap these days. He's mostly into music that he's composing and bass guitar, right?
I mean, Roland, has incredible slap technique on both electric and upright. So he's incorporating a lot of slap stuff on upright and electric. So, I mean, he's still slapping. And I think when gigs were happening, he was doing, Roland is someone who's working all the time, like whether it's with, the late, great Dr. John, he was working with Alan Toussaint. He's working with several artists, Bonnie Raitt. I mean, this dude, he's worked with everyone. So sometimes you can see him playing it, in New Orleans. If you see him on a traditional gig with Dr. Michael White, and so you can see him slapping there. I mean, it's New Orleans, man. So people are working all types of gigs, and I just think it depends on when you see him. Just like me, if you see me on the right gig, you might see a slap solo. If it's not that gig, you probably won't. So
Well, that makes sense. Are there any slap on your recordings?
There's not any particular slap solos on my recordings. There's parts where I play the bass percussively. I probably slap the bass, but it's not necessarily what I just did right there. I'm saving that for some other stuff.
All right. Next album, please.
Next, yes, you see, you gotta save it.
Yes. Have you recorded Slap for Roland?
I have. I've recorded it. I might put that out on my Ample page if you guys type in ample.com and searching for Barry Stevenson. It's a subscription-based platform that's a co-op, so it's super DIY, and it's all the artists all that art money goes towards artists. You pay, it's like a $3 minimum monthly subscription, and you get exclusive content. Like my supporters got my new album. I emailed it to them, when it came out, and I was like, for your support, here's some music. And they get behind the scenes footage.
Please send me the link, and I'll post it under the description after we're finished the video. So for most of the people that watch this after we already live streamed, they're going to be able to access that as easy as possible. And you can also like put it in the live chat comment here.
Yeah, and everything's on my my Instagram. If you hit the little link tree, it takes you everywhere you need to go. Website, Bandcamp, Ample, Spotify, iTunes, the whole thing. But I'm gonna put that in.
We have to be these days.
Yeah, right. I'm gonna put that in. Put these links in the chat though. I'm finding it.
Yeah, please do. And I'd like to mention, like, all Barry's links are in the description already. Not the amped yet, but it will be soon. But his Instagram, his website, his Facebook, his Twitter, they're all there. And you got like quite a few hand claps here from Andrew, from great Kevin, who was a star of the first Slapstream, and from Betty. Thank all of you. So you see,
Appreciate
people love
y'all.
Slap. You should do that more often.
Oh man, when you do it on the gig, people are like, "What?" Especially like when you have like some kind of command of it, it appears up here in New York, but it's to me it's such a kind of like Southern kind of thing that up here people are a little snooty about it. It's like, oh, that's. But it's like, whatever. I'm country by choice, baby. What's up?
Awesome. It's all about the attitude. I remember one jam session where I went. A friend of mine, Marko Djordjevic, from an excellent drummer. I believe he's a professor at the Berkeley these days, and he invited me. Hey, come jam with us. Like, I'm not particularly a jazz guy. I mean, I know how to play it, but and I went to school and all of that, but it's I don't play it regularly. It's like, just don't worry about it. It's fine. And then he invited me to jam. And I was like, cool. And I told the guys like as well, just don't choose some B-side that I never heard of.
Yeah. It's like, give me a standard I know. And most cats who are cool,
they'll
do that, but some people are assholes. So
yeah. So, and I remember the guitar player was like, hey, and we played like something super fast. It was the fastest song on a whole night, right? So they chose my first one to be the fastest. The from all of them, and I already told him like, hey, this is not, I love it, but it's not my thing. But I was, and then they asked me, oh, can you play fast? And I'm like, sure I can. I can play fast. And then the guitar player in the middle was, but you don't want to solo in this tempo, right? And it was like, in a way, kind of like putting me down. I was like, no, sure, I want to solo. So. And it was a bass like with strings very, very close to the fingerboard.
Oh,
really
not my favorite.
Not mine either. And I was like, you know what? It makes the most sense if I just slap like crazy. So instead of trying to play some, saxophone bebop lines, and I just slapped, and the whole place went wild. They all loved it. And I mean, it was pretty cocky for me, but I was like, I'm not gonna say I don't know how to play.
It's like, I gotta think. It's like, and that's the thing. The funny part is like something that Marcus Roberts used to always say to us is, use the idiosyncratic capabilities of your instrument that make it what it is. And the bass has, like, we can play chords, we can play, low notes, we can play high notes, we can play with the bow, we can play pizzicato. There's like an array, you can slide. like there's so many things you can do with the instrument, and slapping is just another part of it. That's how I look at it. It's just another color, another timbre. It's like sometimes you want to invoke that. And if you know what you're doing, like, I mean, you could take that thing and like just kind of freak it. And it don't matter what style you're playing in. If you start slapping and you do it and fit the vibe of what you're doing, it's going to come across extremely well. Like you said, the people love it. So, I mean, the musicians will be like, that's corny, blah, 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 but the people love it. So at the end of the day, are you playing for the musicians or are you playing for the people? I go with the people on my route.
I absolutely agree. It was an interesting experience, and I love what you just said as a quote. Which brings me to the next question. Your band leaders, do they usually tell you, "Hey, it's cool to slap from time to time," or don't do that ever, or do it all the time? So, do you ever get that kind of input?
I've never had anyone ask for it or tell me not to do it.
Okay.
So, I just kind of make a choice in the moment whether or not I'm going to do it. And sometimes I'm like, oh, I shouldn't do this. But sometimes it works. And it's like, that's the beautiful thing about music. It's like we're all scientists. We're just trying to figure out if these concoctions will actually create, develop anything. And sometimes they don't. So, you just go back to the drawing board and it's like, okay, that didn't work. Next.
Yeah, you have to keep yourself entertained during long gigs as well. And I noticed that mostly in bluegrass, but sometimes in jazz, like the band leaders like telling you, "Hey, it's not really this style. Don't do it." That type of thing. Was my experience. Not too often, and not lately at all. Lately, actually, if I play in a rock and roll band, they just say like, "Hey, let's play slap all the time, and during those situations, I like to bring bow or pizzicato or like some more melodic, more sophisticated approach.
Yeah, it's like every song has its moment and it's like kind of calling, if you will, for what you need to do as a musician. And I think the best musicians and our favorite musicians are sensitive to those moments and they play what's, necessary for that the music deems necessary, not what we as individuals think we should play at that moment. When you get out of your way, it kind of creates a whole another lane of creativity that can happen. So I just kind of surrender to those moments, man. It's like when the music tells me this is the moment, and I jump on it. Sometimes we hesitate and we miss it and we're like, dang, I should,
I absolutely agree. And I want to ask you, how did you break that bass swinging too hard? How did that happen?
I didn't break the bass for starters. I didn't break the bass. What had happened was the bass had a previous repair job. For those who don't know, if you type in on YouTube, "swing so hard the bass explodes," there's a video from back in the day when I used to tour with John Baptiste and Stay Human. And we were at UC Davis doing a residency. And this was day 4 of, a little run. And, the bass had held up all 3 performances prior. And we did a master class the morning of the last show with some high school students. So we're playing a master class. And before we get there, John is like, all right, y'all, I want to swing extremely hard. So we swing extremely hard. And that's where Eddie realizes the bass has exploded. He points. And, it had a right where the top where you see that it's broken, there was a previous repair job. And I guess for whatever reason, maybe it wasn't done well. The bass broke exactly in the same spot that it had previously been repaired from. So, yeah, I was titled "Swing So Hard the Bass Explodes." And right there, we're making a joke about how Joe he would always break backline. So he was trying to say I win the challenge of who destroyed the most gear, but this one wasn't my fault. So they said I didn't win. But the crazy part was this performing arts center had a freaking like closet full of double basses. So I just went back to they're like, will this one work? I'm like, but venues will rent backline specifically for artists, but they might have their own stuff. And this venue literally had a closet of like 9 or 10 double basses, like all nice instruments. I was like, yeah, this one will work. This will work. But it was like, you know how each instrument is its own individual thing, and they feel different, they project differently, they have their own like feel and characteristics. That bass sounded really good. It felt great. So when I had to play another bass, luckily it was only the last gig, but I felt it. I was like, oh. It's like the action was nice on the bass I was playing, and I went to a low action bass, and I was like, nothing I could do about it. Yeah, it was just like, okay, let me make it work. But that's a challenge in itself,
Absolutely. Whenever we travel, if I don't travel with my own bass, which is, no, I mean, not that often. Like, last few years, I've been always traveling with my own bass, but occasionally I have to play other people's basses, and it's usually a nightmare.
Thank you, Fernando. I appreciate you checking out the record, man. Thank you.
Yep.
See that? I love there. But yeah, I mean, we call it bass du jour. In the jazz realm, we don't really take our basses with us too often when we travel because it's not really feasible and it's a hassle. So usually when we're on the road, there's backline at the venues. In the worst scenarios, you have to find a friend in town who can let you borrow something. And, it gets dicey depending where you are. I mean, if you're in cities with big music scenes or a huge like kind of classical prestige or whatever, there's usually night spaces around. But then there's sometimes you get in like those smaller cities in Europe and you just got to play the bass that's within the only bass in the 50-mile radius, and it might not have any adjusters. It might be jacked up action. It's just, that's what they got. It's what you got to play with. So bass is yours. You figure out the instrument, and you figure out how to get your sound out of the instrument. That's kind of something that's been imprinted on me from the great masters of our music, is that your sound should it should transcend the instrument. It's in your hand and your breath if you're a vocalist or a horn player. Like, it's how you manipulate air. So, the great Wilbur Ware, who's one of my secret weapon bassists, I like to call it. Apparently, he never did two sessions. He only did 2 sessions on the same bass. Every session you hear him is a different bass, because he had a bit of a drug problem, and he would hawk his basses. And if he borrowed your bass, he might hawk your bass at a pawn shop to get money for drugs or whatever. So he never did a recording session more than twice on the same bass, which is crazy to me. And I'm like, he gets his sound. It's like, how is he doing that? I think that's the goal, is to have that kind of thing that makes us who we are, how we manipulate air through the F holes, and how we, deal with that kind of thing accordingly,
It's yeah, it's a hard job.
Yeah, I mean, that's something my Rodney Jordan, my teacher at FSU, he told me the story about one time he was sitting next to Max Roach, the great bebop legend drummer, and he was saying, they had this thing, they're honoring Max Roach, but they had this big Tama kit, like rock kit from the player of Pearl or something. And like, my teacher was upset. He was like, man, how are you gonna disrespect Max Roach like that, blah, 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 blah. And he said Max Roach leaned over to him and was like, man, I'm still gonna sound like me. And he was just floored. He fell silent. Like, he was like, wow. Like, and it just taught him a valuable lesson. It's not the tools, it's the person using it, These instruments, he's like, it's just wood. You throw it, my teacher would always say, it's just wood. If you throw it in the fire, it's gonna burn like any other piece of wood.
That's great.
What does that tell you?
Do you usually, when you do that, do you change the strings or adjust the bridge or something, or you just leave it as it is?
At first, sometimes, like, I always bring strings with me because that's just in case like a string pops and I gotta change something out, because usually they're not gonna have a backup set of strings. But I try not to change the strings, because then I gotta go back and change it like afterwards, and it's like, after I'm done with the gig, I'm trying to go, So it's something that Ron Carter, kind of advocates for his students, is when you get to a brand new bass, he calls it a foreign bass or a strange bass. He's like, you have something like a piece you can play, you can check how everything's working. He's like, but then other than that, you don't touch it, because it might be like somebody's bass and they paid all this money to get it set up, and you're gonna come, disrupt this person set up and change their whole thing around for like a 90-minute concert and then give them their bass back. Like I was like, yeah, that's true. Like they're going out of their way. Why would you just kind of disrupt their instrument? The instrument, some of them you come to find out is difficult to even adjust the adjusters if they have them. So if it doesn't have an adjuster, like any adjusters, what can you do? You just have to play, There's those cases, and I try to bring a pickup just in case the instrument doesn't have a pickup or it has like a terrible pickup. And sometimes I'll bring my mic just in case maybe it doesn't have a pickup option and I don't want, and it's, whatever the situation may be. So I just try to get things that are, enabling me to get my sound as comfortably as possible,
You mentioned Ron Carter a few times. Do you know what does he think? What does he think about Slap?
I think, I would never speak for him. I think he thinks it's of a, he feels what he said to me is that before when amplification wasn't, around and the mic situation wasn't the same, and maybe there weren't enough mics in the club for the bass player to get a mic. Slapping was something that the older bass players, he said they had higher strings, they had guts, the notes were shorter. It was something that and it fit the style. It was something that enabled the bass to project a little bit more when you did that. But as technology obviously advanced, the need for it wasn't there. And then for the way he plays, it's not really a part of his style. You know what I mean? So I just don't think he likes a sort of elegance to his bass playing. So he likes it to be as little effort as possible to play and get beautiful notes. So I don't think it's necessarily a part of what he does,
Have you ever heard him play Slap at all?
I've never heard it, but it might be somewhere.
Yeah, I never heard him either, but I love his playing, and it's it was always very sophisticated approach to upright bass, and very intellectual, I would say. And then I cannot see it being like something that he would do, but who knows? I'm a fan, but not one that has all his records or something. So
yeah, he's on over 2,000 and counting. Yeah, so I don't know anybody who has all his records, including himself, and he has a lot of them. I've seen he has a lot of them. And he hasn't even listened to a lot of them. Like I'll mention like a Desert Island record for me, like something by McCoy Tyner, and he'd be like, "Oh yeah, I kind of remember that session. I haven't listened to it since we did it." I'm like,
"Yeah,
what?" So that's what happens. But I think one thing about when your heroes, when you listen to them, when you study, if you're fortunate to study with them, like you realize that they have particular things that make them who they are, and that's the reason they sound like the way they do. And he's a sophisticated person. He's an intellectual. Like his bass playing is an extension of who he is as an individual, and that comes across in such a profound way that you realize you're never going to be able to sound like these people just based on like your anatomy. You're a different person. You have different hands, the whole thing. This is your posture, whatever. But then you also realize like there's a certain personality trait that you might not possess that this person does, and that's beautiful because that's what makes them them, and that's what makes you you. So kind of going back to what you asked, like how do you find your sound and kind of figure that out? Is you realize that this is what makes this person who they are, and this is what makes me who I am, how I approach it. Now let me take what they're trying to give me and see how I can assimilate it to get what I think I'm hearing out and across, And if it doesn't help, I discard it. If it helps, you use it. That's there's an old saying, chew the meat, spit out the bones, which is, or if you're a vegetarian, eat the fruit and get rid of the rind,
I absolutely agree. Do you mind playing a little bit more?
Yeah, no problem. I'm going to play this Duke Ellington tune, It Don't Mean a Thing. It's, like I said, one of the first slap bass tunes I ever learned how to do it on. Now, kind of slow how I take you through it, how I kind of approached it.
Awesome. All right, we're going to let Barry get ready with the bass. And again, I'm reminding you, please subscribe. The subscribe button should be somewhere around here.
and check out the links below in the way you can support the channel. And Patreon is especially something that I've been using these days, and I gave a shout out to our new Patreons already, and Barry seems to be ready.
All right. So I don't mean a thing. Let me come back. Double slap.
Yay! Please keep the
keep the
bass.
bass, keep the
Keep the
bass.
bass. I want to ask you. Yeah, we were talking a little bit before we started the episode about how important it is to be relaxed when playing slap, and you mentioned something that you wanted to talk a little bit about it.
Yeah. So, can you still hear me pretty well?
Yes.
All right, cool. That means the mic's up good. Something that I learned from Roland Garren was just, how relaxed his wrist was while he was slapping. And so he told me that you can't get the rhythms that you're hearing out if you're tense. And, in certain situations, if you're tense, like you see yourself start kind of like not being able to do like. So if I tense up, try to do that, it gets really short. Like, but if I kind of relax. if I were tense, like whenever I feel myself getting tense, I notice my rhythm gets worse. So I have to just tell myself to breathe and relax, and the rhythm becomes a little bit more natural, you know. And then also something I, you know, have the luxury of doing because you know the stuff I'm playing is a little bit more flexible in terms of how I can approach rhythm. You know, I try to think of it more as if I'm like playing like a drum, or as if I'm like a dancer, you know. I won't give away all of Roland's goodness because I leave him to that. But he told me one thing was, you know, thinking of it as a, you know, as if it's a dance, you know. So like if you're like, so like, you know, thinking about it as if like it's not really a bass at that point. Like it's notes, but you're like almost like a pitch percussion almost, you know? Thinking of it kind of like that sound.
And which fingers are you using for slapping? Is it mostly this one or the middle one?
I kind of go like, it's mostly this one. I kind of use this one to kind of mute things. Like somebody watched a video one time I was kind of doing like this. Because I had to go back to like this.
You sound great, man. Really love hearing you play.
Thank you.
So you never use two fingers like to slap. It's usually either or.
Yeah,
Either point or the middle, right?
Yeah, because even if I'm doing like this, it's mainly the pointer. And if I'm doing this, it's still the index.
Okay. It's have you studied like other bass players like that and it came to a conclusion like to do that technique, or it was mostly coming from Roland?
It was mostly from watching Roland and checking out the few videos of Milt Hinton's technique. You know, growing up, it's funny when I realized you were in Tiger Army. I was like, I think I've seen Tiger Army, like when I was a teenager, like, you know. So to see, like, I know the rockabilly thing is the kind of like galloping thing. I could never do that. I could never get the. So it's like now I'm kind of like, well, this is how I get it out. I can't do the. My friend Twerk Thompson, who I know you had on his show, he's like, oh my God, Twerk has that thing figured out, man. And I'm telling you, when I saw him do it, I was like, okay. And then Martin has this thing where he like slaps with his thumb.
Yes.
Martin has like a whole, and he plays with like his pinky when he slaps. I'm like, what are you doing? So like I try to like every now and then if it's like some, but then my thing is more the hand. Technique. Oh yeah.
And I love what you're doing, you know, like that kind of like old Milt Hinton style. But I mostly play with these two fingers. And even if I play jazz, if I play something like, I don't know, rhythm change, it will be with the, I'll try to lift my, you hear my bass?
Yeah, I hear you. Yeah, that's exactly how twerk does it. Yep. Yeah, I can't. It's so. I can't even get it out with that. Yeah, I can't even. It's like I'm so done with these two fingers. It's something that's actually I didn't realize that's how cats were doing it was these two fingers. So that's something to shed. You see, like this is how we learn from one another. You see how someone else does something, you're like, okay, let me see how can I take that technique. But yeah, I see you over there. You got a little, Stanley Clark's in the line, flicking, and that's also. Yeah, man. I had a friend in undergrad who was from Nicaragua, and he was really into. He was a classical bassist, amazing classical bassist named Nestor Zayas. Still around, so. But he also would work on these flamenco pieces on the double bass and these different modern, more flamenco-based classical pieces. And he would be doing like the different like rasgueros or however you pronounce it, like, and that kind of thing. And there's that one dude now. I forget his name, the bass player who does all the body percussion.
Adam Ben Ezra.
Woo! Yeah, that first time I saw that, I was like, yeah, bro, that's good. That's good.
I did a workshop. I mean, a masterclass with Adam. We did a like there was a festival in Europe. We did a two. It was like a 2 nights. First night it was my concert, and second night was Adam's concert, and we did a masterclass together. And so he was explaining all these flamenco stuff and chords. He has a bass that it's very low action.
The setup for it.
Yeah, so it makes sense. For me, it would be kind of impossible to do my thing. I mean, not impossible, almost impossible to do my thing on his bass.
And then it's like you also don't have to do his thing on your bass because it's like that's his thing. Like I can appreciate. Yeah. That's like something I can always appreciate someone else's approach, and it's like, you know what, that's not for me. I appreciate it, I like it, but it's like that's not what I'm trying to get across on the instrument. So I think that's going back to your point. That's another way we kind of figure out who we are is not only what we like, but what we don't like. Not don't dislike, but like stuff that we don't want to incorporate into our style. And it's like how can I take snippets of this concept and put it into what I want to do with it? And I think that using that kind of concept and logic is how we get to who we are. So like I'm gonna take this thing and I'm gonna figure out how to. Cause I see what I'll probably do is I'll probably go back to. See, I'll probably go back to Don't Mean a Thing, figure out how I can do that on it, and then watch it grow. That's how I learned that stuff at least.
Have you ever studied like those or like seen any footage from the old New Orleans jazz bass players? Have you seen the position of their hands?
I've seen some of photographs, and I've seen like the what is it? Al Morgan's playing with on Reefer Man, like the way he's doing it is interesting.
That's
Al Morgan
International House with W.C. Fields.
No, the one where Billy Eckstein is playing Reefer Man. You seen this clip?
With Cap Calloway, right?
Cap Calloway, thank you. I'm tripping, bro.
That's from the movie International House with W.C. Fields.
Yeah,
that's really
that
cool
scene. One. That scene. And I was like, I've just seen photos. I haven't. There's a video of Chester's artist when he's an older man slapping, and his is more of like a 2-fingered approach too. Like when you watch them, they're kind of like. They're kind of like more of a 2-finger kind of thing, Same thing with I just thought of his name. There's a video of brain fart. But that's just kind of how I noticed a lot of cats would do it, especially when I was living down there. It was more of a 2 kind of finger thing. Depending who you were talking to, like the older gentlemen were doing that kind of thing. There's a gentleman by the name of Richard Moten, amazing bass player down in New Orleans. I mean, Richard Moten has his own slap technique, and it's just kind of like,
I know. Like, I'm so glad that you mentioned his name. He is like maybe 65 or something.
yeah, I'm not exactly sure how old Mr. Moten is, but I know he
Had, like,
has the
regular
strength and
gigs in a
stamina of a
hotel.
35-year-old. I know that much.
Yeah, he was playing. He had the regular gig in a French Quarter in a hotel over there.
Yeah, the Royal Sonesta, what
Yes,
was once called Urban Mayfield's Jazz Playhouse. I think it's just called
I'm
the Playhouse
so
now.
glad you mentioned his name because I filmed him. I went to his house.
Oh,
He
wow.
invited me to his house, and that must be like at least 10 years ago.
Man, do
Probably
you
like
have that footage somewhere?
I do.
Man, where is it? Is it available online?
No, it's not. It's not. It's
You might
somewhere on
wait.
my hard drives because at one point I was filming every bass player that I could meet.
Mm.
And for the Art of Slap Bass project, and like just life happened, and then I had lots of problems with that website. I couldn't fix it, and this, and I was actually thinking to get in touch with him and post that online. Is he still
Yeah.
playing?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm sure. I mean, well, as much as anyone's playing right now with New Orleans and the rest
Yeah.
of the country being on lockdown in terms of live music. So, yeah, I think he's still playing the bass. I'm sure he's not gigging right now. Maybe
He's great.
I've seen some house concerts that people were doing, but yeah, there's not, like you said, there's not that much footage of prominent jazz bass players playing the slap technique, but the bits and pieces you do see, like Milt Hinton is more of a, he's a two finger kind of. He was using this hand. I noticed a lot, like index. So yeah, man, that's just kind of how I figured it out.
I think that technique comes from Milt Hinton because he was talking about in his books how he switched from old style of playing like Bill Johnson and Pops Foster, and then he switched to his approach, and he said that he was able to do more complicated slap bass patterns because of the different setup. I mean,
Yeah.
of a different technique.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it makes sense.
If I try like to sound like that, like, but I usually go back to my regular approach.
Willie Dixon too. That's what I was trying to think. Willie Dixon. Watching Willie Dixon do it in just such a gut bucket style was very, very like he was like whatever. He would just he didn't care, man. It was like whatever, like
He was just really, really cool.
Yeah. He's like, yeah, we doing this, whatever.
Even the simple lines would sound so cool.
Hey, man, there's a lesson in that. There's a lesson in play your part and drive the point home until you can't drive it home no more.
I love it. I love it. You mentioned Tiger Army and then the fast stuff that we do, and it's interesting. I noticed that I play lots of those lines like only with my middle finger. If I play really fast, like stuff like that, I would play only with middle finger. I would switch my technique and then.
So you're going to where? That's how I'd probably do it.
Yeah, something like that.
But see, I can't get the other little things out just yet. Like, let me see if I can do my middle finger. Yeah, I can't do it just the middle finger.
The main problem with that is like that you have to play for 1 hour like that.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah, Godspeed to you, bro.
For 15 seconds, it's not too much, but when you
have
to play an hour.
But that's also a thing, yeah, man. Yeah, like you're saying, like it's like a stamina thing you have to build up with it too. So like, I feel like it's almost like a muscle I haven't been training as much since I moved to New York because I don't do it as often. And it's like sometimes I have to remind myself, like, okay, let me still keep that in my tool shed. Let me keep that cool. So when I need to pull it out, it's like, it don't sound sad,
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
It's like all kinds of different slap approaches. And there's no like one that it's right or the other ones are wrong or something. It's
Man.
I just love slap.
Like, I mean, like a cat who you also had on your show who literally is to me one of the cats who actually are keeping the slap tradition alive in the jazz community. William Ledbetter. Woo, Willie, boy, that dude. I remember the first time I saw it. He knows how to do both. I was like, yeah, bro. Okay, yeah, you got the juice. I see you, bro. I see you. But yeah, man, just this cats are keeping up. Like also my friend Twerk Thompson, man. Twerk can play slap bass like that's he lives in it. He's so relaxed, and that's the thing. When you watch him do it, he's not even when he's doing the crazy rhythms. He's super relaxed while he's doing it. Everything's like one motion, you know. Same thing with Martin Mazikowski, man. Martin. What I like about Martin's, like I said earlier, is I like how his approach is completely different. How he told me he got it was he would watch or he would listen to James Singleton when he was a kid. James Singleton's another amazing New Orleans bassist. And while he was listening to James, he said he wouldn't be able to see what he was doing. So he just kind of figured out that this is what he thought was how he was doing it. Same thing with Roland. He would hear it, but he didn't see it. So he figured out what he thought they were doing, and it turns out he was dead wrong. But in the process, he figured out his own approach, you know, which is, like I said, it's like some Middle Eastern, like, you know, gypsy kind of like drone, just gorgeousness, you know, it's a vibe, 100% a vibe.
All great players, and you know, quite a few people mentioned Twerk, and I should get him on the slap stream one of these days.
Yeah, man. And yeah, definitely. You haven't gotten. I thought you did get Twerk on here.
Not yet. You know, this is only 19th episode.
Oh man, yeah, you gotta get Twerk in here. Come on, you gotta get Twerk. Twerk is the man.
At one point, I had like only Austin guys, and then I was like, okay, so now New Orleans guys, and I'm like, you know, there's like a whole world out there. I have to
yeah, man,
on like other players. And I
the
really want to get
community is
some of the Romani like gypsy players, but I have a problem with the language. You know, I don't speak Romani. There's some of them speak French, and I do speak French, but I don't think that I would feel comfortable to talk for 1 hour publicly.
Yeah. Where are you from exactly again, Jordan?
Serbia.
Serbia, okay. Yeah, you gotta speak Serbian. Do you speak any other languages, like from the surrounding areas? Like, I know some of my friends who are from out there, like, you know, they'll speak like a little Russian, like my friends from Bulgaria. And
you know, Serbian is the Slavic-based language. So basically, we can communicate. You know, Croatian is pretty much the same. Bosnian, the same. We do understand Macedonian and Slovenian a little bit because we used to be the same country, Yugoslavia. Yeah. But I feel that I understand Bulgarian and Slovakian quite a bit. And then there's a few words there here and there with Russian and Czech.
Yeah, yeah. My friend, I used to do this. Jazz at Lincoln Center used to have a club out in Doha, Qatar, and you do these long stints there. And most of the people, funny enough, Doha apparently has the second largest Serbian population, only second to Serbia, because a lot of people go to Doha and work. So like I'd have a lot of Serbian, you know, there'd be a lot of Serbian, you know, staff members in different parts of, you know, Eastern Europe too, like Bulgaria and Georgia. And all these different places, and a lot of Russians too. And I noticed the one thing that they all could do was speak Russian. And I was like, oh, I wonder if that's and I think it was like just, you know, a matter of work, but I was like, I wonder if it's easier to pick up Russian if you understand them, you know, if you're already speaking a Slavic language, you know. So.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's the same basis. So
yeah, sounds so foreign to me. So foreign to me.
Interesting country because we're kind of in between East and West through the whole history. So
yeah,
it was pretty open to the West and open to the East at different times. So you had like all these influences, which I really cherish as far as culture and music goes.
Yeah, man. Yeah. You ever try and incorporate any of that kind of music into your slap?
Oh yeah, I play a lot of that. You know,
I saw your website. I saw that. That's right.
I play lots of like odd time signatures, you know, 7/8, 9/8, 11/8. and I love doing that. Like when I play slap, and actually, I mean, there's a little theory. It's probably not true, but I mean, we were talking a little bit about Bartok Pizzicato earlier, and when I was researching about it, I thought he probably heard that on upright bass somewhere in Romania or Hungary because borders were changing back in those days,
Hmm.
um, and then I was reading about his biographies and like analyzing his compositions and all of that, and I came to a conclusion that he mostly did not hear it on bass, that he probably heard it on an instrument called gordon, which is instrument that you slap with one hand and you hold a stick with the other hand and you hit it. And
Mm.
it's one string, it's a percussive instrument, it's not there's no intonation. So I'm pretty sure that's where he heard the sound, and he just applied it on violin, viola, and cello in his
Mm.
fourth symphony.
Send me the name of that instrument and something displaying it. That'd be interesting to pick up.
It's yeah, that's
Or put
how
the
I
spelling of it
felt,
in the chat.
and until I actually saw it, and it was like, okay, this is just interesting as an idea.
Yeah. I mean, it's like I said, we're scientists, man. We try it out. If it works, cool. If it
Yeah,
doesn't, back to the drawing board.
but it's yeah. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's where he got that idea, and then he just applied on different instruments. Because whenever I talk to Romani players from Romania, and they're all amazing slap bass players,
Mm.
um, they all say that they haven't even used slap at all until the 70s in
Interesting.
Romanian Romani music.
That means
So
it definitely came from. Yeah, that's interesting.
so
It's
that
well, I remember I went. I'm sorry. I remember when the first time I went to Europe. This is again with John Baptiste, and we went to Samas Hussein, France, and there's the Django Reinhardt Festival, and afterwards we went back to these camps, the campsites where there's like going to be like these jam sessions, once again, this is like I was saying, the regional music of wherever of whatever scene you're at, like the songs they knew, I was like, I've never heard of these songs, and they're like French and French and Italian Revolution songs, and everyone in the whole session knows the tunes, and there's like these little sessions, all around the different parts of the campsite or whatnot. And I noticed the way the French players were playing slap, it was very much in a kind of traditional jazz kind of standpoint. But some of them, it did look like they were doing the Bartok pits, like as if they were playing classical bass and pulling out, not to the side how we were doing with these fingers. It was very interesting to see that, and I was like, yeah, this is deep.
it's cool to see all these different approaches, and I'm glad you mentioned Martin. He has like very very different thing going on, and he's the only one that I heard doing that. And French bass players, I had like a few episodes ago, I had Nicolas Dubouchet, who's excellent slap bass player, particularly in that older jazz style, and a little rockabilly as well.
Yeah, I mean, and don't forget, somebody knows Rodney Jordan. Yeah, you're right. Rodney's, you know it. Rodney Jordan School of Bass for real. But it's kind of like, I also noticed it in Latin music too. I think people forget that like Cachao used to slap like in between his notes to have like a percussive kind of thing. It wasn't. I mean, it's the same concept of adding a percussive element to your notes. The way he would do, he'd be like boom, 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 and need something. I feel like he's like the beginning of playing the bass of like the body of the instrument. He started playing it like it was a drum and stuff like that. I was like, that's killer. So like I try and take all that stuff and do what I can with it. You know what I mean?
Absolutely, Israel Cachao. He was one of those
Cachao Lopez.
He's up there with Willie Dixon.
Oh yeah, I mean foundation. We're talking about tree trunks of bass playing. Like this is the trunk, and everything springs forth from it, you know, in these styles. Like, I mean, Willie Dixon is the person who introduced the blues licks that we know and use and take for granted now to mainstream populations. Like, you know, he'll be the first to say that he didn't invent them. Like, they were stuff he heard, you know, in the plantations of Mississippi, you know. And he just took them, electrified them in Chicago, and said, "Hey, whoa, boy, whoa, whoa." That's, I mean, every time you hear that, it's like, it's the most soulful thing in the world. Like,
Oh yeah.
how do you just get a feeling when you hear it? It's like, how do you get tired of playing that? And he just lay it down. That's it.
That's the same
You
way
know?
how I feel, you know. And whenever I listen to Willie Dixon, I'm like, you know, I just want to play blues, you know. So,
Yeah, I had the same feeling, man. I was checking out this record he made. It's a duet record with Memphis Slim.
oh
And
yeah.
they're playing they just, you know, she done moved to Kansas City. I was like, ooh, like, what is he doing, man?
Absolutely.
It's just, oh yeah, it made me like be like, man, I want to do a whole blues project where we just play real gut bucket blues, like, you know, the stuff where it's not like, well, the blues is 12 bars, and it's like, no, the blues can be like, you know, 10 bars, it could be 8, it could be 15. It's like, you know, like
8
when
and
you
a
listen,
half.
yeah, you know, like when you listen to freaking, you know, Robert Johnson and all these cats, Blind, you know, Lemon Jefferson, like they're not thinking about, oh, well, let me get 12 bars, and they're like, nah, this is where the melody is. This is how we're gonna linger for like an extra beat just because I felt like it. Like,
Exactly.
you know, welcome to it, world.
Yeah, you just have to listen to the people that you're playing with, and you know, be focused
Yes.
on the soul, not like, you know, technique or something.
Yeah, play music. Play music. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Like, don't play an instrument. Play music.
Yes. You know, one of my teachers that when I was studying jazz back home, he told me you don't even start playing music until you feel that you're playing that instrument is not part of your body. Once instrument becomes a part of your body, you're you're actually able to express yourself. That's when you
Yeah.
start. That's the
Yep.
beginning. You
Yep.
know, if you're thinking how you're holding it or how your left hand or how you look like or this or that, no, there's no music there.
I mean, that's why we practice. We practice so, you know, when we're on the bandstand, we don't have to think about it, and we can just let these things flow freely. You know, like Charlie Parker is famous for saying, learn everything, learn all the music chord changes, the melody, learn everything inside out, learn it inside out, and then forget it all and just play.
Yes.
You know, so I try and embody that when I play. It's like, you know, you practice, we figure out things, but at the end of the day, like, I want to be free to express myself, and it doesn't matter the style I'm playing. Like, I'm free. You know what I mean? We could be playing like bluegrass. I'm still gonna be playing free within that to, you know, incorporate what I think the song needs at that moment and what's gonna propel the music into a certain direction. You know?
I absolutely agree. You don't want to put, you know, life is too short. You don't want to put like too many limits in front of you, like so that you have to follow all these rules and then just be, you know, just just being a copy of someone and then
Yeah, man. You know, it's funny. I don't even know if Roland remembers this moment, but it was right when I moved to New Orleans. I went to go to Snug Harbor, which is a legendary jazz club on Frenchman Street, and he was playing with Miss Jermaine Basil, who's a legendary vocalist in New Orleans. Just an amazing woman, spirit, singer, like the whole yard. But I asked him, I was like, well, you know, before you get on stage, like, what are you thinking? This is like, you know, me, a college student asking dumb questions, you know, like, so what are you thinking about before you get on stage? And he gave me the most simple and plain answer that was so perfect. He's like, I'm thinking that when they call my name, I have about, you know, I have to walk through, get on stage. You know, I have to make sure I turn the amp on that's on, the bass is plugged up, you know, volume, it's not on mute. Make sure the bass is in tune. Make sure my music is on, you know, on the stand, and like my stand lights on. And then he's like, and then usually by that time it's time to go. Like, so he's like, I try not to have any preconceived notions about what I think should happen once the tune's counted off, you know? And so when he said that, it just resonated with me so much and stuck with me through the years. It's like, whatever you practice at home, whatever you figured out, whatever this cool new thing that you think is amazing and you want to show the world, it doesn't matter if it's not what's appropriate for the music at the time, what the music is calling for, not what your ego is calling for and what you want to impress people with, but what is the sound of what you're doing, the song, how can you serve the music with your notes and like uplift people in the bandstand? So, if you have any preconceived notions, you might they kind of block in what could happen. So you limit your possibilities as a result of not allowing the music to just give to you and receiving what it's giving you. You know what I mean?
I absolutely agree. Well, that's a long answer to
Sorry.
before going on stage. But I
Yeah.
love Roland. I want to get him on the show as well one of these days.
Yeah,
He's
man.
ever available and not somewhere on tour.
Well, he has a brand new baby at home, so I think he's she's about a year old I think now, so he's dealing with the pandemic as the rest of us, and writing music, changing diapers. I mean,
yeah,
he's somebody who's always getting better every time I hear him. And it's just he's such a diligent student of music and sound. He's always working on something, trying to figure out how to incorporate something new into his playing. His work ethic is incredible, man.
Were there other students that got into slap because of him?
Sure. I'm not I had a friend down there, Sam Albright. He would do a little slap. I'm sure Nathan Lamberson is another great bass player down in New Orleans. He did a little slap, but I'm not sure exactly who else as a result of Roland Guerin became a great slap artist. Another cat I know who always prides himself for not going to school. We have a shared friend, the great Jason Djordje. Jason's like, I didn't go to no damn school. That's one of the first things he said to me when I was I didn't go to no damn school. I learned from the streets of New Orleans how to play bass. So that's my man. I love it. He's actually how I heard about your website, Art of Slap Bass. We were talking about some slap bass stuff, and he mentioned the site, and I was like, oh, let me check it out. And I was impressed, because I saw you did, he's done a couple of articles for the site, and so I was like, oh, this is a great treasure trove of information. Like you're saying, there's not much. Unfortunately, there's not much information about some of the early New Orleans jazz bassists, and even you guys are trying to cover as much ground as possible, but there's only so much information that you can find about them. So, unless you live in New Orleans and have access to the Tulane archives, which everyone does who lives in New Orleans, or if you visit, you can go check them out. But it's you can't rent the stuff or anything. So, I mean, I couldn't only imagine how long it would take you to get all that information,
It's interesting. You mentioned that every time I went to New Orleans, I would go to Tulane and spend hours over there. Hours.
See, that's why I know Because I sat there and I listened to some Bill Johnson tapes. I was like, this is so heavy.
That's really cool, right?
Man.
I remember, and those interviews were done mostly in the 40s and 50s, I think. Some of them in the 60s. Mm-hmm. And they're long. They're 5. I thought that my Slapstream is long, but those are 5-6 hours long interviews.
Oh, man. Well, you got to think about it. It's older men talking about their life and just finally having somebody to listen. So they're going in,
And it's great thing what they've done, in the Tulane doing that. And I mean, I remember going there every day and trying to hear all those interviews, from Steve Brown, Pops Foster, Bill Johnson, and some more obscure guys as well, because they really
Steve Brown. They got Steve Brown, which he was a cat Milt Hinton talks about. Just so many cats, man. It's what is it? Ed Johnson is a cat also from New Orleans. I'm trying to think. I know there's a dude. I think his name was Al Morgan. There's a dude who used to play with. Al Morgan was
playing there. Yep.
Yeah, and I'm trying to think. Was it Ed Johnson? Not Ed Johnson.
Are you talking about Ed Garland?
That's what I'm talking about. Thank you.
Okay.
That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, man. It's just so many bass players that and then the cats who didn't get famous. I learned about Alcide Pavago's Slow Drag through listening to Preservation Hall. Like, there's a whole slew of bass players from New Orleans that, who came up in the, the revival period, so to speak. Who, like, people don't talk like Slow Drag is one of them. He was old by that point in time, but it's like the music was still going. Chester's artist, as I said earlier. Just a lot of different cats. There's a dude, I can't remember his name. I think it's Fred Kemp. No, I'm messing up his name. I don't want to. Ed Frank. I think his name was Ed Frank. I got to double check that one. But it's like cats who play with Preservation Hall, but they also just really played around New Orleans and like we're doing these gigs. Some cats. There's a dude who plays electric bass who plays traditional gigs, and he's like the only person you'd ever want to hear do it. His name is George French. George French, man. Up on the fly situation like Mike Pence. But yeah, man, George French, man, he plays traditional music beautifully on electric bass, man. It's just so many great bass players and bass tradition that came out of New Orleans. Like, I mean, I even heard George Porter, the legendary bassist from the Meters, playing traditional music on electric bass and playing straight ahead jazz and like killing it. I've also heard him playing straight blues gigs, like, ooh, George Porter, man. Like, man, let me tell you,
New Orleans is kind of like never-ending, like dwell of like music, and that's one of the cities that I always love to visit and always love returning whenever I'm on tour. If New Orleans is on a itinerary, I'm like, yeah.
It's definitely one of those. It's definitely one of those energies. Man, I see somebody ask me what kind of exercises I do now that we don't really have gigs. I've been fortunate enough to be, like I mentioned earlier a couple of times, I've been studying with Ron Carter. So with that in mind, I have to keep a certain kind of regimen up so I don't sound sad in my lessons, because he's definitely the type of person to let you know that you're not handling business. So stuff, I work on etudes. I work on different tempos, setting the metronome at different tempos and playing through tunes. Always working on sound. Intonation is something I'm always working on, using these etudes as kind of like a springboard for that. Walking bass lines, time signature stuff, like just, work, always listening to music. Like my wife will tell you, I listen to music all day. I'm always listening to something, figuring something out from, just listening to it by itself. But mainly, like I said, it's been a lot of etude work, tunes. Yeah, hope that helps.
Like a classical etudes or like
classical etudes. Yeah.
Okay.
And also, Ron Carter has some that he wrote in his method books that he's been releasing in the last couple of years. So, been checking those out that he wrote himself that are more geared towards pizzicato playing. His approach to playing the bass. So,
I found like these like classical method books kind of like the best ones, like for technique, that kind of like a better than other books that you can find. I mean, other books are good too, but it seems that classical guys kind of figured out like all these tiny details that would be beneficial to any kind of player.
Yeah, it's the way I approach it. Classical playing is a pedagogy that's been around for hundreds of years. So they have, their whole kind of concept is about, being uniform and being the same and everybody looking the same, how we approach things. So there's a lot of different schools and things that people subscribe to. Something Ron Carter has us do is Xerox the pages, white out all the fingerings, because he's like, who's to say that what this person figured out is the only way to do it? That's the drawback of etude books, is if you only just approach it with this fingering, I mean, like, you probably noticed, like, oh, wait, this thing works better if I do it this way for you, based on, once again, it goes back to your anatomy of your hand, like how you get around the instrument, like, or it just might be a better way. Like, it's just a different way. It's how you choose to do it. So he has us white out the numbers and write our own fingerings in, and then play the etude like that. So it's more like the notes give you a melodic reference to kind of center your pitch, because you know when it's out, because you're like, that's not what that sounds like. But it's more of just having something to sight read, something that's consistent. It's already written out. It's, you know, how it sounds. Whereas how it translates to jazz is that it helps with intonation, it helps with placement and knowing where the notes are. It helps with sometimes it's techniques that you can take. Like sometimes when I'm playing through etudes, song ideas will come up, or the way this happens, I'll be like, oh man, I can create a whole piece using this kind of concept that I learned in this etude. So it's just like music, you know, it's just more music to be checking out. That's how I look at it.
Absolutely. If someone asks you, what would be your advice, like to give to younger self or to younger students, beginners, like what to do, how to approach the bass, and to give them maybe, if you wanted to talk to your younger self and say like, hey, don't do this way. Is there anything that you would especially point out?
I would just tell myself to, while I had the time, to practice more, to you know, really, really utilize the time to focus on fundamentals, like making sure you know all your scales, both arco and pizzicato, full range of the instrument. Reading more music. Like there's a period when I was when I was an undergrad and I was in orchestra and jazz band and small group. I was reading a lot of music, and reading music is you know, it's a muscle. You have to work it out. You know, so when I moved to New Orleans, most of the gigs we were playing were by ear, like, you know, playing all these traditional songs where it's just like you either know them or you're about to learn on the bandstand. You know, nobody was bringing charts for you to learn the tunes that they've been playing for all their life. You know, so just being more diligent about taking care of business when I was an undergrad. Because when I got to college, obviously, I was in college, so I was doing what college students do, you know. But fortunately enough for me, I was diligent enough to take that time seriously as I possibly could, given the environment, and you know, just I would tell a younger student, not necessarily younger me, because I feel like I kind of embody this, but just having an open mind to music and always be checking out stuff that necessarily isn't what you would listen to, and see what you can learn from it. You know, keep an open mind. With something the great bass player Reginald Vio said to me one time was, always be listening for how the sound of the bass is evolving in modern music, and see how you can incorporate that on the upright or on the electric. How do you get those synthesizer sounds, or something that could be reminiscent of it? How do you approach the instrument in this manner if you're playing this kind of vibe, but you're playing it on upright bass, you know? So just always keeping an open mind. I think it's such an important thing as a musician of any instrument, but especially the bass, because our instrument relies on being able to morph into different situations and be able to hold the bottom and hold the rest of the band up, you know?
And do you have any advice on how to get a gig these days? I mean, not like a pre-Corona time and after Corona time.
Yeah, pre-Corona, it's interesting. I'm going to be starting a series that I haven't really talked about this, but so you hear it first on Slapstream. We're going to be doing a little series, just, you know, a couple episodes with some of my bass playing friends. It's going to be about working as a bass player. You know, what are the tools you need? And the first stuff is just professionalism, showing up on time, learning the music, being ready for the call. You know, preparing, learning as much tunes for whatever style you're trying to play. Like if that's bluegrass, then what are the standards in bluegrass that you need to learn? If that's you know, jazz, what are the standards? What period of jazz are you trying to play? I mean, and start somewhere and just build upon it, you know. Also, just being somebody who people want to be around, you know. I'm not saying you have to be super excitable or always reserved or whatever, but just being somebody who people would want to have to see at 6 a.m. in the morning on a tour bus or at an airport, or after the gig they want to go grab a bite to eat with. Like, be that person, you know. Be somebody who's enjoyable to be around and takes care of business when the time comes, because that's who gets called back, you know. It's not necessarily the person who can play the fastest, the person who does this is the best soloist. It's like, it's the person who can do the job and is enjoyable to be around while they do the job.
And where is that series going to be? YouTube or?
Yeah, it's gonna be on YouTube. I'll probably be streaming it on Facebook Live too. I'm gonna pre-record them and then put them out there. I'll be talking with some friends of mine in the bass world who are some of the most workingest cats in their respective fields. But because they're working so much and they're bass players and they're playing behind cats, many people might not know them, but you've heard of them. Like I have a friend by the name of Nick Clark. He plays. He's out in L.A. Near you. He plays with Kanye West's Sunday Service, like her. He plays with a bunch of different people playing key bass. He's from Texas. Great key bassist, upright bass player, electric bass player, just a beast. And then a friend of mine, Corcoran Holt, who's he plays with Kenny Garrett when gigs were a thing, and just he played with the Heath brothers, like a slew of people. So people like that who might not be household names to your average listener, but are on records that people have heard and vibe out to.
I will feature your ampled. This is the one, right?
Yeah, that's it.
That's where when people want to find out about. I mean, if they want to find out about your project, they should go to your website primarily, right?
Yeah, I mean, I'm on Instagram a lot. I'm also like that's as you put up there at Pocket B. But Ampled is more of it's kind of like a DIY co-op version of Patreon. Whereas, instead of being structured where venture capitalists are the people who are, making the money off the thing, and it's more of the artists all own a share. After you get a certain amount of subscribers, you own a share of the company. And so the money that's being invested in the company is also being invested in the artists, not just stockholders. You know what I mean? So it's kind of like a DIY. It's a co-op. It's a co-op version of Patreon. And on my Ampled, you can find like exclusive stuff. Like I have some solo bass stuff I've done up there. I'm going to be posting demos and unreleased music. I've put some unreleased music up there only for subscribers to download. Like I said, they got my brand new album, The Iconoclast. They got it before everyone else did, and they got to see the artwork before everyone else did. It's like a behind the scenes look at stuff I'm doing and stuff that I might not want everyone to see, like before it's finished. It's kind of like you get the backstage pass, so to speak. And also, I Instagram a lot of stuff on there. A lot of my music is for sale on Bandcamp. And yeah, I'm on Facebook. I'm on Twitter. I think they all serve different purposes, and I try to use them accordingly.
Yes, all these links for all of you that want to check out Barry's music and Barry's life, all these links are of this video. Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, his website, and I will add Ampled as well, but you can check out Ampled here as a banner going left to right.
Yeah, my man, he got it all hooked up. But that's the thing, it's like you said, we're now, it's like the way we consume art is like we're so much more like a part of the experience is who the artist is, so we have more access now as artists, so it's kind of a double-edged sword because now you don't have any privacy, but you're always on your social media, but in a way you can connect with people who are fans of your music in a very, very organic way, and it's more meaningful in a way. So whichever your poison is, enjoy.
Yeah. That's how I feel about social media as well. You kind of have to be on it as an artist, but you can also be wise about it. You don't have to be on it all the time, or you can have someone else doing it for you as well. So as long as you have certain control about your artistic integrity, I would say.
Yeah, that's what it gives us the power to do nowadays. So you just got to wield it properly,
Absolutely.
Yeah, man.
Let's get back to Slap a little bit.
Yeah.
What would you say for you were the most essential slap bass recordings?
I think for me, Milt Hinton's slap bass solo on the Branford Marsalis record, Trio GP. They play Three Little Words. That song is a slap masterclass by itself. Milt Hinton's playing so much bass and so much rhythm, and the sound is beautiful. It's just like, that's a slap masterclass. Also, Jelly Roll Morton's Dr. Jazz, and those kind of things. Like any Jelly Roll Morton, Hot Fives, like just checking out those records. And then in terms of rhythm and just understanding how to play traditional music, I really listen to Sweet Emma Barrett and her Preservation Hall Jazz Band. That's a favorite record of mine, secret weapon, so to speak. But yeah, that Milt Hinton, if you're trying to figure out how to get in some different stuff as a soloist, that record, that's literally all I have.
I'm glad you mentioned Brentford Marsalis, and I was actually surprised, to hear that record, because he's not really into, old school slapping, and then he brought Milt Hinton on that record, and it sounds great.
I mean, I think Brantford is such a student of the music that,
Yes.
and he acknowledged that he was, he called a master to do his record, so he was going to take the master's style and not. I mean, he definitely was aware of what he was doing and what he was going to get.
Oh, absolutely.
I
mean, he
he's.
played with his dad, right? With Ellis, he played old school
I'm not.
jazz as well, right?
I'm not sure. Mr. Marsalis, the late great, God rest his soul. He lost him to coronavirus complications during this pandemic. Mr. Marsalis, he was in New Orleans and he went to Virginia at one point. It's quite possible that whenever Milt Hinton was in town and playing, that they might have been in the same house band. Like, it's very, very possible, but I'm not necessarily sure. I'd have to ask Jason Marsalis.
I meant Brentford was playing with his dad. That Brentford was playing with Ellis as Marsalis' family.
Oh yeah. All the time. I mean, the beautiful
old school stuff.
There was living in New Orleans, like it was interesting because I would do gigs with Jason Marsalis all the time, trio with just saxophone sometimes, or his Vibes quartet, and then I would play with Delphio Marsalis' big band, and it's funny, like, unfortunately this never happened on one of the days I played with Delphio's big band, but Brantford would come in and sit in the entire gig with the big band, like if he was in town, like, or if Ellis was playing it. He used to have a Friday night residency for 20 plus years at Snug Harbor. And Brantford, if you were in town or they were in town, they'd always come sit in with their pops, if Wynton were in town or something like that. So, they definitely played with their father a extreme amount of time. So, I got a chance to sit in with him a couple of different times, and I did a concert at UNO where he played a couple of tunes with the student ensemble I was in. So,
That's so cool. There's one DVD of Marsalis' family where Roland is playing bass, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I saw that one.
Yeah, man.
That one was really cool.
Yeah, man.
You have all of them on one stage.
Yeah, it was deep, man. It was a very interesting concert. I love that concert.
Yes, absolutely. And as far as nowadays slap bass players, are there any people that you particularly like?
Like I said, Roland Garren is obviously my go-to. I really like listening to William Ledbetter. I really like listening to Twerk Thompson, Martin Mazzucato. Basically, all the people I've named. I mean, that's the cats who I still hear doing it, who are kind of taking it to another level and inspiring me to keep trying to get it. You know what I mean? Yeah, man. A lot of interesting stuff.
Is there anything else that you would like to play? I would love to hear you play more.
All right, I'm gonna play something a little different. I gotta go soon because I'm gonna have a 2-year-old who's gonna be waking up and need my attention. Okay. But I wanna just see if I can do a little bit more modern take on some slap.
All right, we're close to the end, close to 2 hours with Barry Stephenson. Thanks a lot for everyone to joining us. We have a few more minutes here till he gets ready. And if you haven't already, please subscribe to the channel. There's like tons of other interviews coming up. and you notice I'm only featuring top-notch people, so you don't want to miss out on any of those. If you want to support the channel, go to the Patreon or PayPal, Venmo. All the links are below. And Barry seems to be ready. All right. Please don't leave the base. I have one.
Oh, don't leave the base. Don't leave the base. All right.
You're afraid of me.
I feel like this is a reoccurring theme when you show people are going to put the base on. You're like, no. Hold the base. Hold the base.
Exactly. That's my one opportunity to ask you all these questions.
Yes.
As far as slap-based terminology and nomenclature, like what are the patterns that you're using, and are you using like traditional names like single slap, double slap, and all of that, or you have your own thing?
Yeah, I just call it single slap, double slap, and triplets. Like, I think that's like kind of the rudiments, if you will. Is like you do a single. Something I learned was that the singles kind of save you when you get stuck. You know, so if you're like. They kind of have a vibe to them too when you put the right single in a certain place. So, and then I double triplets. That's how I do my triplets. So I do. I saw that video of Mill Hinton go. I don't know how he gets that. I think he goes. That's how I think that's how he got the 16th notes. But yeah, I just do single, double, triplets. 16.
So single is when you pull the string, but you slap it once, or you count. So you don't count the slap of the string.
No.
You count the slap of the palm, basically.
Yeah, I can. Yeah, exactly. I guess that's more of a pluck. So like I'm thinking of it like electric bass. So like slap, pop. It was. I mean,
Okay.
you know, like or pluck, slap. See, like, cause yeah, on electric, it's the opposite. Like it would be like. So it's like the slap of the palm kind of replaces the slap that would be the thumb. And it's like the pluck also kind of takes the place of how the thumb would articulate the note if you were slapping on an electric, you know?
Got it.
Like,
so if I got it right, so single slap would be that pluck and then slap of the palm.
yeah.
And double would be that when you do twice after the note, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the triple slap, you count in triple slap case, you count both slap of the string and slap of the palm, right?
Yeah, exactly. I know that sounds weird. That's why I just call it a triplet. I'm like, however I get the triplet.
Okay.
See, if I start tipping up, I can't get it.
Try to do it. This like when you move your hand. I think that for triplets, it's actually easier when you do it. I would say, more of a rock and roll way.
Yeah. The palm thing. I still haven't been able to get that thing, man. Yeah, that shit's hard.
I think that one is kind of much easier than some of the stuff that you do, but it's.
I think so.
Yeah, because it's the triplet thing is just.
I know, it's like I can't get that motion. It's so hard for me.
What do you say?
I said I can't get that motion. It's so hard for me. Trust me. Twerk tried to show me this shit. Like he was like, yeah, he's like, it's just he showed me, and I was like, bro, I can't. Like, and I've seen videos where like people were saying it's like heel, then palm, then string, like the gallop. Even William Ledbetter tried to show me this one time. I was like, bro, I'm like, it just won't do it. Like, I think what I have to do is I have to go. I gotta do it slow and control it. If I shed that for like a month, really slow, and then I get thrown in the heat of battle, it'll just all of a sudden come out. That's how I shape my practice. I'm like, oh, okay, let me just shed it and like get it in my bones, and then it'll be subconscious, and it's like, okay, then I'll be able to actually do it.
Yes, it's all about practicing slowly and being focused on the tone.
Yeah. Man.
What kind of bass is that?
Funny enough, it's just a lemur music bass, man. It's a carved, it's a hybrid bass, so it's a carved top and back and the plywood sides. I got it in 2008, I want to say, so it's not extremely old. It's not anything special. The bass is like their second batch step up of, Chinese lumber that they assemble in California and ship out. But something when I first was buying it, Rodney Jordan told me about this company. Is he's like, this company, whatever you tell them you want the bass set up for and how it's going to be played, they'll set it up for you and it'll come right out of the box ready to play when you get it. And they shipped it and I went straight to a gig right afterwards and felt and played amazing. And I was like, wow. I have another bass as well. It's set up a little differently. It's steel strings. It's an older German era bass from the 1950s. But yeah, man, just, tools you have. Sometimes you're always trying to find, like, I need to get this, and it's like the thing you have sounds great, So,
It's about the fingers and the soul.
that one.
Yeah,
Yes,
and I actually my favorite choice of bases are hybrid bases when you have plywood back and sides and carved top. For some reason, they, I mean, for gigging at least, maybe it would be different if I was playing, Botticini concerto or something. But in this case, it's this.
Yeah,
and
man.
You mentioned what kind of strings are you playing?
I'm playing the Ron Carter Lobella Black Nylon set, his signature set. When I started studying with him, he gave me a set, and I was like, that wasn't what the sound I was going for. And then now that I have two basses, I was like, well, let me see what they're going to sound like on this other, on my first bass, and we experiment with that sound, and they actually sound really great on that instrument. So Desron Douglas gave me the inspiration to put him on my bass, because I played him on his one time, and we talked about it, and I was like, you know what, let me try this out. And they've been, I've had them on for, I guess, the better part of a year now, and it's been great, good feel. They project. They're really, they're loud, surprisingly, extremely loud, but the sound is really clear and articulate. Like, you can hear.
But they're nylon. Is that what you said?
Yeah, black nylon. Yep.
Huh.
Yeah.
Interesting. I never tried them.
But they don't feel like, it's like they're nylon wrapped, I think. I got to do more research on it. But it's not like the nylon strings where they feel kind of like plasticky. Like, they feel like steel. They feel like the technology was so they would be the sustain of a steel string, but with the warmth and boom of a gut string. So that's what they were. But they're not gut strings. Yeah, they're not gut strings, though. So they don't have like that kind of temperate thing, and they're not easily frayable. But they're definitely meant for pizzicato playing. Like, they project really, really. They're booming. And the harmonic.
So they're not for bow that much, or?
No, I mean, I Mr. Carter he's given me the tools to get a good bow sound with them. You need stickier rosin, and if you have to switch your bow hair to nylon hair, and that apparently works better. But I haven't switched to nylon hair. I just know I kind of come from the school of bowing. They told me that, like, it doesn't matter if the bow is rosin or not. If you know the three main components of getting a good bow sound, which is arm weight, speed, and bow placement. If you understand that concept, then literally it doesn't matter what you have. You can still get a good sound with the bow, So it might be a little more difficult, but I've seen people.
I never heard about it. I never heard about it, but I did hear that Gary Carr was insisting that his students were able to play without rosin at all.
Yeah, he's one of those people who he puts rosin in his bow, and then he takes some of the rosin off with a cloth. It's like, and he says he barely rosins his bow, like he goes periods of time, because there is a difference in the sound. It's weird. It's such a different sound, but it's a little harder to get to,
Yes, you have to really make sure that you know what you're doing.
Yeah.
And what kind of pickups are you using?
I use the David Gage Realist. I mean, I've experimented with pickups. Just for me, that pickup is the most reliable. It's the most consistent. It's the most natural sound of the instrument. And I use the Copperfoot one. It's the infamous, as they call it, the Copperhead, where it's a little piece of copper film that goes under the bridge. Mm-hmm. I also have used the newer ones they have, where the pickup is, I forget how the new ones are. It's like the pickup goes, it's like wedged in between. It's like almost like what the Underwood was, but a better version of that. I think that's how the new ones work. And then they also have the Lifeline, where you connect it up. It's like a portable one. I mean, you got to finagle the amp a little bit more with that one. But I think in terms of like having a pickup that you can easily install and take off at the end of the gig, that you can fit in your pocket, is perfect. So.
Hey, you never had a problem with feedback on that one?
No, it's just because you have with that one, you have a volume control actually on the pickup, which is kind of nice. You know, like it has a
Oh, cool.
blend knob, so you can feed it more gain, less gain. Say if you're taking a solo and you want to crank it up a little bit, which never really happens. I don't ever do that, but if you wanted to, you could.
I felt that with the David Cage pickups, I had some problems with feedback on bigger
Um,
gigs.
gotcha.
But that's like more like for a rock show. You might have like a
hmm
loud drummer and distorted guitar behind you.
Yeah, I'm. That's always interesting game to play because I've had feedback. It's such a thing, different amps and the double bass and just figuring out that sound. It's crazy. A lot of it is you got to actually have the gain very low because like the impedance on those like pickups is very very high, so they're meant to be a little hotter. You know what I mean? Like I always ask my friend, I was like, sometimes when I play SVTs, like if it's a bigger room, I can't get the SVT not to feedback. It's just like the combination of it. But I figured out with like EQ, like figuring out how to like notch out certain things based on the amp in the room. And sometimes you just have to let the front of house dial you in because they have the tools to do it and make it not sound like shit. But it all depends. It's a struggle, man. I'm always trying to figure it out myself, to be honest.
Absolutely. And what kind of amps are you using? Do you have your
Yeah,
favorite or
I
whatever is the
normally.
backline?
It's sometimes you're at the women mercy of the backline, but I like using Aguilar amps. I think they
Mhm.
handle extremely well for electric and upright. Sometimes that's what the gig calls for. So yeah, I just like the sound of those amps. They're really really nice.
Those
But
are
I
good
play,
ones.
yeah.
Those are good ones. A friend of mine, Miles Mosley, another
Mm-hmm.
excellent upright bass player, he plays Aguilar, and then I tried his amp a few
Yeah.
times, and it sounds great. Sounds good for slapping as well.
Yeah, man, he's such a cool dude. That dude is. I remember I met him one time in New York. We were just hanging at like the Zinc Bar, and we had some mutual friends, and we walked to Smalls, and like I was like, I had checked him out and read about all the stuff he was doing with Upright. Like I was in the corn when I was in my metal phase, so to find out years later after I stopped listening to him, they got an Upright player. I was like, is an Upright bass player in corn right now? What is going on? Like John Davis's side project, I think. So and then I checked out what he was doing with the effects, and I was like, yeah, man, it's somebody who is a super influenced by Bootsy Collins. To think to use the Upright with effects in that manner was like okay, but he figured out a lot of different things too because with the carbon fiber base, it's not as prone to feedback. You know what I mean? So he's figured out a lot of stuff. I mean, he's got an arsenal of sounds.
Did you say fiber carbon bass?
Yeah, he has a carbon. He has a base that's carbon fiber.
Miles?
Yeah, I think
Huh.
he has like the black base he has. It's like a star. I don't think, or it's made out of a different material. I know that.
It's the
Check it
same
out.
bass like I have. It's same made by the same guy, same wood.
Really? I thought it
Yes.
was. I thought he had a different kind of the black base.
Yeah, with has like a red star on it or gold
Yeah,
star
I
or
thought I
something.
thought it was made out of a different material.
Maybe has another bass. I know that the blast called Jason Burns, he made two basses for
Mm.
him, and they were both regular plywood.
Oh, maybe
But it
that's what
might
it
be
is.
something else. So that
It
I'm
might
not.
be the plywood that also helps it too, because I know the car bases are a little bit more resonant, so like it's probably a little crazier of a sound.
Yeah, for sure.
Because like the plywood base is like if you get a nice K, they're just clear. They're just clarity all day. Like the notes go boop. You know.
Lots of people are interested about the string height. Have you ever measured that?
Yeah, I've done different. I guess I like just sound. I take my bass to get set up by David Gage himself, and
Oh,
I've always something he told me that Ron Carter said to him is about 9 centimeters is how much he wants it up. Like you just Ron told me it's you want to be able to take a number 2 pencil and put it between the fingerboard and the string, and it fits there. Like not super like obviously the strings are resting on it and not too much space from it, but like you should be able to put a number 2 pencil in there, and that's about like the appropriate height to get sound with it still being able to play comfortably. Christian McBride said something about 9 centimeters, somewhere around that that area. So it's just a matter of like being
That's the
able
string
to
height?
get, yeah, like being able to get
millimeters,
sound.
probably.
Millimeters, excuse me.
Yeah.
Millimeters. 9 millimeters. Like I was trying to think. I was like, I know it's not inches.
Yeah.
But so just trying to get so you can get your finger under this sound, because we talked about earlier. Like it's hard sometimes when you play like basses with really low action. I miss notes if the action's too low. As opposed to being able to play faster, I end up playing harder, and I get blisters as a result because I'm like the strings like rubbing against the finger. I don't know. I can't do it. It's not my sound. I don't like I don't like that sound. And for me, tone is of greater value to me than speed. Sound and tone, and I feel like the sound and tone is a lot better with a little bit more higher action. I mean, that goes to say, like, I'm not trying to play where I can't like be agile on the bass, but it's like I also need to be able to project and get some sound across, because that's what the band relies on, is sound.
I agree. And especially for us that play slap and arco and pizzicato, it's hard to find that spot that all three techniques you can use comfortably.
Yeah, definitely.
You have to sacrifice something, either past bebop lines or tone or this, so it's not like
and there's a happy medium. There's a happy medium somewhere. So like that's how I feel like we're all trying to figure out. And I think David Gage sets up my bass where I have that happy medium. I've been very happy with that. So
what does he think about slap bass?
I mean, I haven't asked him. I'm sure he's cool with it, though. I mean, he loves the bass. He loves all types of music. I mean, he sets up Willie Nelson's bass player's bass when he's in town. So, like, he's worked with everyone, So
you mentioned Willie Nelson's bass player, and he's the guy that commented on this video earlier.
Oh man, which cat?
Kevin Smith. I interviewed him for the first Slapstream episode.
Oh wow, man! Yeah,
great bass player, great slap bass player, and Willie Nelson's bass player.
Yeah, man. So that's a scene, That's a style of music where you got to know how to play the right bass notes at the right time.
Absolutely. How do you? I have only a couple of questions for you. And how do you like to record your bass? Is there a special technique that or like you ask your sound guy?
Whenever I'm in the studio, it's obviously a matter of what they have with the mic situation. But I normally like the what is it, C14 or C12? I can't remember it. I like that one. Like the mics I need, like they're tube and just a real nice sound. RA20 is not a bad one if you're for the house setup. Or live, I like to use RA20. Or if I bring my DPA 4099 with me. But yeah, there's a lot of different. I like the RCA ribbon mic sometimes for the bass, like a different combination. On my last record, we had the C14, and then we had like an AKG in the bridge around some foam, and then we had the bass going through this Ampeg. Yeah, like we had like a lot of different stuff to get a sound because we had the channel. So it's sort of like the bass. It kind of depends on what the studio you're going to have in mind, what they can do.
And when you record slap, is there any particular technique that you'd like to use as far as mic go?
No, I do the same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah. I go for the sound of like the instrument and the space that I'm in. So I think whoever the engineer is, what they're doing is they're probably taking the gain off if they know some slapping is going to be. They always ask you, can you play a little bit how you're going to record? So if that's something I know I'm about to slap, I'll let them know like, hey, let's maybe adjust the gain real quick because this is about to change. Thank you, Betty.
Yeah.
Appreciate you listening to the whole time.
Yep.
Checking out and adding the music to your playlist.
Super sticker. So you never put an extra microphone for the slap, like
no, I don't.
The fingerboard.
No, I don't. Usually when they set up, I don't get I'm not an F-hole type sound person. I'm more of I like the mic kind of a couple of inches in front of me. And usually the engineer will usually find the sweet spot of where that particular bass I happen to be playing resonates and gets the best sound quality. And sometimes, you know, if they have the channels, they might put a little higher when it gets finger noise, and then a little bit one that's lower to get more body of the bass. But like I said, for this record, I just did. We had a bass in the bridge. We had a bass that, you know, mic set up in front of me. We had a room mic, you know, so we're just trying different sounds just to see what we could get when we had the channel, you know.
It's all about trying out. All right, I have one more final question for you. What inspires you still to do what you're doing after all these years, and you know, especially after this weird year? You know, we discovered that, you know, our profession is definitely not a priority, and although I do think it's a priority, you know, to keep your soul and heart and clear mind. But it brought lots of questions, you know. So how do you find strength and how do you find inspiration to continue what you've been doing for all these years?
Well, you know, now like I have a 2-year-old, so my inspiration is my family. You know, I have to continue doing what I'm doing for them, and not just myself nowadays. You know. Secondly, I stay inspired by just life and enjoying the moment and being able to breathe the same air as everyone else right now, even if it is COVID filled or whatever. Also, my peers, you know, watching my friends who are doing cool things, like wanting to stay, you know, in the loop of doing cool things too, you know. So I draw heavy inspiration from my surroundings and my friends, and just the music I'm listening to. Just always, you know, I love music, so for me, it's about just really keying into that love and trying to always get better and find something new that I haven't been able to check out, you know. So yeah, so much to it, so much life. That's how I stay inspired, the good and the bad, you know. It all makes for a story.
Life is the never ending and the biggest inspiration for sure.
Yes, indeed.
All right, Barry, I want to thank you for being a part of the Slapstream live from Slapsville. We're like 2.5 hours.
Yeah, man. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it. Great conversation. Thank you for the tips. I'm going to check that out.
Yes, absolutely. And please make sure to play and record more Slap.
Of course.
Next
Watch
album.
out for him. Yes, indeed.
Can't wait to see you play, and good luck with everything.
Thank you, Djordje. I appreciate you, man.
Thank you. All right, this was another episode, 19th episode of the Slapstream with Djordje, live from Slapsville. Thanks to all of you that were watching, commenting, and I would like to remind you one more time, please check out our Patreon, check out all the donation links below. There's PayPal and Venmo, and subscribe. Don't forget to subscribe. And I'm not sure what it actually means, but they say like ring some kind of bell under these videos. I never done that, but apparently helps the YouTube algorithm actually showing this video to other people. And make sure to follow Barry. All his links are below. And follow me, follow Art of Slap Bass, and I can't wait to see you next Saturday. In the meantime, don't forget, never fret, slide it in smooth and keep it in the groove. This is Djordje. See you next Saturday.